Polyphemus the Cyclops. The war was finally over. After 10 long years of bloodshed beneath the walls of Troy, the Greek kings and their weary armies turned their ships towards home. Among them was the clever king of Ithaca, Odysseus, eager to return to his wife and son he had left behind so many years before. But the sea has little sympathy for mortal plans. The journey that should have taken weeks would stretch into 10 more years filled with monsters, gods, temptations, and impossible choices. And one of the first and most famous of those trials began on an island inhabited by fearsome one-eyed giants known as the Cyclopes. Driven off course by rough seas, Odysseus and his fleet reached the island of the Cyclopes. The island was fertile and covered with grazing sheep and goats, yet there were no cities, no farms, and no signs of any kind of civilization the Greeks knew. The Cyclopes lived alone, each in his own cave, answering to no king and obeying no laws but his own. Curiosity got the better of Odysseus. Leaving the rest of his crew with the ship, he chose 12 companions to accompany him inland in search of whoever called the island home. Together, the 13 men climbed the rocky hills until they discovered a massive cave. Inside were baskets overflowing with cheese, pails filled with fresh milk, and pens crowded with sheep and goats. His companions urged him to take what they could carry and leave before the cave's owner returned, but Odysseus refused. Among the Greeks, hospitality was sacred. A traveler who entered another's home could expect food, shelter, and a gift before departing. Surely the owner of such a well-stocked cave would honor these ancient customs. So they waited. As evening fell, the cave's master returned. He was enormous, a giant with a single eye in the center of his forehead. His name was Polyphemus, one of the Cyclopes and the son of the sea god Poseidon. Without noticing his visitors, Polyphemus drove his flock into the cave and sealed the entrance with a boulder so immense that no band of mortal men can hope to move it. Only then did he notice the strangers. "Who are you?" he demanded. Odysseus stepped forward and explained that they were Greeks blown off course on their journey home. He appealed to the sacred laws of hospitality and asked for food and protection, reminding the giant that Zeus watched over all travelers and guests. Polyphemus laughed. "We Cyclopes care nothing for Zeus or his laws." Then, without another word, he reached down, seized two of Odysseus's companions, smashed them against the cave door, and devoured them raw. The survivors watched in horror. There would be no hospitality here, only survival. That night, as the giant slept, Odysseus considered driving his sword into Polyphemus's heart, but he stopped himself. If the Cyclops died, the 13 men would remain trapped forever. None of them possessed the strength to move the enormous stone blocking the cave's entrance. So he waited. The following morning, Polyphemus awoke, seized two more of the Greeks, and ate them before leading his flock out to pasture. Once again, he rolled the great boulder into place, sealing the cave behind him. Now 4 of Odysseus's companions were dead. As the day passed, Odysseus searched the cave for anything that might help them escape. Then he noticed a massive olive wood club resting against the wall. He and his companions cut a length from it, sharpened one end into a deadly point, hardened it in the fire, and hid it beneath piles of dung while they waited for nightfall. When Polyphemus returned that evening, he repeated the terrible ritual. He milked his sheep, he lit his fire, and before settling down for the night, he seized 2 more of Odysseus' companions and devoured them. 6 men had now been lost. Only 6 companions remained alive, along with Odysseus himself. Then Odysseus offered the giant a gift. Before leaving Troy, he had filled a wineskin with exceptionally strong wine, intending to offer it to generous hosts along his journey. Polyphemus had shown no generosity, but perhaps the wine could still serve a purpose. The Cyclops drank and demanded more. Again and again, Odysseus filled the giant's cup until Polyphemus swayed where he sat, his speech slurred by drink. Finally, the giant asked his guest a simple question. "What is your name?" Odysseus smiled. "My name is Nobody." Polyphemus burst into drunken laughter. "Then, Nobody, I shall eat you last. Consider it my guest gift." Moments later, he collapsed into heavy sleep. Odysseus gave the signal. The seven survivors dragged the sharpened stake into the fire until its tip glowed red. Then, working together, they drove it deep into the Cyclops' single eye. Polyphemus awoke with a scream that echoed across the island. He tore the burning stake from his eye and stumbled wildly through the cave, blinded and roaring with pain. His cries summoned the other Cyclopes, who gathered outside and shouted through the entrance, "Polyphemus, who is harming you?" The blinded giant cried back, "Nobody! Nobody is killing me!" The other Cyclopes fell silent. "If nobody is harming you," they answered, "then your suffering must come from the gods." Believing there was nothing they could do, they returned to their own caves. Odysseus' trick had worked. But the greatest challenge still remained. At dawn, Polyphemus rolled away the great stone to let his flock out to pasture. Standing in the entrance, he carefully felt the back of every single sheep as it passed beneath his hands, determined that none of his prisoners would escape. Once again, Odysseus relied on cleverness instead of strength. He tied each of his surviving companions beneath the belly of a sturdy ram, hidden by its thick wool. He himself clung beneath the largest ram in the flock. One by one, the animals shuffled toward the entrance. Polyphemus felt only their backs, never suspecting the men hung silently beneath them. At last, the great ram carrying Odysseus approached. The blinded Cyclops paused and gently stroked the animal's wool. "My old friend, why are you the last to leave today? If only you could speak, you would tell me where that wicked nobody is hiding." The ram walked on, and with it Odysseus escaped. The survivors hurried back to their ship and pushed away off the shore. His companions begged Odysseus not to call out to the giant, but pride overcame caution. Standing at the stem, Odysseus shouted back, mocking the blinded Cyclops. Enraged, Polyphemus tore an enormous boulder from the mountainside and hurled it toward his voice. It crashed into the sea just behind the ship, sending a tremendous wave that nearly swept the vessel back toward shore. Still, Odysseus could not resist. One final time he called across the water, "If anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca." Then Polyphemus raised his hands to the heavens and prayed to his father, "Hear me, Poseidon. If I truly am your son, let Odysseus never reach his home. But if fate has decreed that he must, let him arrive late, alone, having lost all of his companions, and let sorrow await him there." Poseidon heard his son's prayer. From that day forward, the sea itself turned against Odysseus. Storm after storm drove him from his course. His companions perished one by one, and the journey home that should have taken weeks became an epic that would last 10 years. The escape from the Cyclops was a triumph of wit over brute strength, but it also revealed one of Odysseus's greatest flaws. His cleverness saved his life. His pride changed his destiny.